Welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for March 14th, 2024. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
I do.
Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, I raised my hand. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been making a lot of progress on the Express revamp. I guess we want to call it the Express Forward Initiative. One of the things that this group originally was really critical in helping get started was the triage team. So we have a bunch of people who were on the triage team, but it kind of went defunct for a bit. But part of what we want to do as we get things sort of kicked back off is get that going again. So I just wanted to say on here, if anybody's interested in helping with that effort, jump on over to the Express repos or ping me and I can link you stuff. We will probably need somebody to volunteer as sort of a champion for that effort, for getting that kicked back off. So if you're interested, let me know.
What would the ask be in terms of triage on people? Is it like a rotation? Is it like some number of hours? What? I can't just refresh our memory on how that was going to work.
Yeah, the way it worked before was very loose. There was a regular meeting. I don't know if it was every 2 weeks. It's been a while. And the group basically got together and sort of decided what was most important to do. So it's not really any concrete expectations. The whole org gets tons of questions, bug reports, incomplete things. I mean, for a while recently, we've been getting spammed. So like that would be something that would, I think the idea was part of what we're going to spin up is get some folks together who care about helping with the spam situation. So yeah, pretty much like a choose your own adventure sort of deal, but it's a great way to learn the project. It's a great way to make a difference in a big project in a way that doesn't necessarily mean dedicating a lot of time. If you respond to an issue here or there or help answer a question, that is a great help. So anything that people want to do or can help with is welcome.
Okay.
But the champion would be to like help really guide the group. So we need,
Right.
somebody to run the meeting, somebody to help, orchestrate the sort of, they're not really private, but the discussions that happen outside of the, responding to end users. Like there used to be like some there's like a Teams view where you can have discussions and people would have like, hey, how should I help this person kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
The folks would help each other. Like somebody needs to sort of be there to help foster that and sort of get it kicked back off. Jaresh was, I think, doing that previously. And so we could probably also, reach back out to him and see if he's either interested or wants to help let somebody else know what he was doing at the time. Yeah, definitely open-ended.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, because that affects how easy it is. I think say so. It sounds pretty open, which is good. Anything else you want to add on that, or any other announcements people have? Okay, if not, let's move on to the issues tagged for the agenda. The first one is impactful status board, project status board. So I think Darcy, that's you're the champion for that one.
Yeah, I don't have any updates here. It's unfortunate. I don't know if anybody else has commented on that since I last looked at it. Wes, do you have updates? I see your hand.
I don't have an update. I have a question. Is that
Shoot.
all right? Do you
Sure.
have more to say? Okay, cool. So Ben is setting up this sort of LFX dashboard thing. I don't really understand what it is yet. I don't know. So I was going to ask if anybody does understand and if that has any relation to this topic. Like
Yeah, totally. So I do have context around that. I actually saw, I've seen it, I think one or two presentations that were given to like the OpenJS Foundation about the LFX dashboards. And I know actually in this call, maybe a month ago, month and a half ago, I know we talked about it. I think we even went through um the LFX dashboard. I know Michael has contacts there as well and has seen that historically. Um, though, I mean, depending on what projects end up being within the scope of the dashboard, I think that there might be overlap here. Um, like I don't want to necessarily duplicate efforts. So if like um maybe I should reach out to Ben and just see what the scope of work he has. The thing with this impactful status board or impactful project status board is that it's actually going to include projects that likely aren't a part of the OpenJS Foundation, which is kind of beyond the scope, I think, of the LFX dashboards because they are only tracking information about member projects. And in fact, I don't even know, and this is a good thing to maybe ask Ben, but and maybe we could even find it out ourselves. I don't think that that dashboard even tracks all the repositories of the organizations either, right? It's only really, I think it only checks like maybe the specifically configured repositories that you like give it. I'm not sure like I guess what I'm saying is like I don't know how manual it is versus automatic. It's not like you just set up an organization and then it's going to track all the repositories in it because I don't think that it would encompass or include even maybe PKG.js, right? So that might be something that we should maybe be concerned about or tap Ben to get some insight on because I do think there is value in getting more like in fact I think there's value in getting tracking all potential repositories within organizations that are owned by the OpenJS Foundation, but I don't think they look at it that way. And there might be costs associated with that too, right? So like I'm not sure what that tool, if that's like an off-the-shelf tool or it's a custom thing that was built for the Lakes Foundation to track projects. So yes, there is some overlap. To make a long response long, there is some overlap. I'm not sure how much, but definitely the key deviation there is just like the idea with this impactful stats board is that we'll be able to bubble up information about the community more than just like member project repository.
When
Yeah,
when
I,
he gets done setting that up on the Express project, I'll try to also link everybody here. That just so that because he is setting it up on all three of our orgs. So that might answer some of your questions there, Darcy.
yeah. I think like my take is it's also likely to be like you got to look at the dashboard for an org versus I think what you were looking at, Darcy, was here's a view of a bunch of orgs at the same time, right?
Correct. Sorry, I'm trying to eat at the same time as apologies.
So I think it sounds like pretty soon though, Wes, you'll be able to answer the question, right? Like if it's turned on and you know what the dashboard looks like for the Express ones, I think you'll be able to answer pretty quickly. Oh, this looks exactly like the same thing, or no, this is like a different use case.
I think the LFX, to your point, Michael, like there is a lot of overlap. I do think there is like the health, they the way that they're tracking the data points might be a bit different than how we were going to do it, which might be reason enough to continue to like, pursue this and spend time on it when I get some time. But the concept is pretty much the same. Like you want a health, like some sort of like health scorecard for the projects. And it would be nice to know, like, in the conversations I've had, a lot of folks want to see, you know, what's the health of their dependencies, which I think is why we have this conversation here is because, if we can track what the ecosystem health looks like, and health can mean many different things, but it's like, you know, how many open issues are there? How, you know, when was the last commit? These kinds of data points. We don't have to like give check marks to them or green or like color things or like, you know, make that, but like bubbling up this kind of data helps you inform you whether or not maybe you know, there's signals for whether or not we may need to jump in and help with maintenance or jump in and maybe support like projects. So I think it is, you know, the intent of this project, I think is you know, specific to our ecosystem, but there's definite overlap with the things that they're trying to track and the intent, I think, behind the LFX dashboard. So
Yeah, like actually, as you speak, I could see a similar use case where, like, if the OpenJS Foundation and the CPC want to track the health of their member projects and look at those regularly to see that things are going okay. That sounds somewhat similar, but like I haven't seen that being proposed at the CPC level or like so I think, and Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I've heard like, hey, we have this dashboard thing project. If you want to opt in and take a look at yourself, do right. So that doesn't sound that much similar. But if it got to the point where it was like, hey, you know, the proposal is that like the foundation staff and the CPC should regularly review all of the dashboards for all the projects in the OpenJS Foundation, that starts to sound more similar, right? But I haven't seen that proposal, and therefore I haven't seen anything that would help me understand, is the tool going to help you do that versus taking a look at your own individual project and looking at history and stuff. So
Yeah, it sounds like maybe the next steps for that part of this discussion is just to, once it gets set up for Express, we can maybe do a walkthrough and see what parts
yeah.
would be happening.
So I'm just going to take in the minutes, like next step, Wes to report on what he's learned from LFX dashboard being turned on for Express. Yeah, sounds good. Anything else on that one before we move on?
the last thing I'll say is like I haven't had a lot of time to actually go do the work, but it's pretty straightforward. Like I already basically enumerated all of the impactful projects. So it's just a matter of basically forking what we had done for NPM, like their status board, and just changing like the manifest of repos or projects that we're tracking. It should be pretty straightforward. So if anybody else wants to, you know, jump in and take over, feel free to. I don't know if I'm going to get time again in the next week or two or before our next meeting to make progress, but again, I'll try if no one else wants to jump in.
Okay. The next one is create doc on how to support ESM and Common JS1 publishing modules. I think Lucas, Luke, you mentioned you would be involved in that one.
Yeah, no update on that. I haven't quite gotten around to taking a look at it. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is status update and next steps for PKGS create.
That one's me. I think been still chipping away at the underlying package. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think Rick opened up. I think somebody reviewed the thing to like make it into a mono repo. I think that was our last decision. I have not re-reviewed that. I think he pinged me again. I feel bad a little bit, but I've been pulled in a few directions. If anybody wants to go there and just drop a review or hit the merge button, I feel like that's pretty safe at this point. We need to move the package JSON, the crate package JSON into there. And I've sort of been, like I said, hacking away at a few of those things. So, but nothing like super concrete there other than, yeah, if somebody wants to go click, maybe we should just tell him to merge.
PKGJS, right? And that is, so which repo? Just KTGS and create PKG, right? That repo. And there's a pull
I think it's
request.
I thought it's create. Oh, it is create PKG. We renamed it. That's why I thought it was create. Yeah.
Right. So it's this PR you were talking about. Let me put to everyone.
Yeah. Like, I guess Ethan approved, Darcy, you approved. So should I just click the button? Should I
That's
just
what I
go-
was getting at. Like if the people doing the work submitted it and have reviewed it, but just land it, right? Like if
Yeah.
there's no objection
Wait. Oh,
and
Darcy's got a change requested. Wait, that's never mind. Sorry.
shows
Do-
outdated, I think.
It does. It says 2. Who's the other one? Oh, me. Darcy, if you're blocking and I'm blocking, can I just click merge? Are you all right with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not,
I'm doing
I
it
think
right
it
now.
should be the kind of thing that, like, you know, if you have, I think we even have stuff that says like if there's only one active person, you don't have to wait for a review. But like in the case like this, there's a review, it's been open a long time, unless there's like blocking things. And I guess there was a couple that maybe is why, but otherwise we should just land these things and like it's not like it's gonna break something immediately or right. It's like
yeah, I didn't update my review. I apologize. Like Rick did the work to make both of our points irrelevant. So
Perfect. Okay, it's merged. So we can start pulling in the packages together into there and get things going. I'll probably not do that this week, but I'll try to get my parts of it done as soon as I
Okay.
can.
excellent. Okay, anything, if there's nothing else on that one, then let's move on to the agenda issue Westview's proposed we add. So basically proposal to charter itself as ownership of the package manager space. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll let
so
you take it away.
okay, so this is going to be, I think, an interesting discussion. So historically, things around package managers with Node did not have a group who was chartered with helping make recommendations and owning decisions for the Node.js project. That meant that those decisions were immediately made in the Node.js repo and would go pretty much straight up to the TSC without a lot of prior discussion. I think that this has been, in my opinion, problematic. These kind of discussion groups, especially when they're chartered to own something, really provide a lot of value so that you can refine ideas and get discussions out of the way and not have them be in the limelight right away until folks have a chance to talk through things. We've had discussions like this in this group. We actually even way early on said, hey, maybe we should charter the group to own some of that domain. I don't know if there were issues. I know it was discussed on calls. We could go back through the history and find it. We decided not to, mostly because we were new and there's a ton of scope that was not that we were working on at the time. Like back then we had the, like I mentioned, the triage group came out of here. Well, and that's the thing. Yeah. So as Darcy said in the chat, I always thought this was the working group place for this. I think we all kind of did, but it was whether or not we wanted to officially charter for it. So we were doing it sort of ad hoc, but that meant that we didn't have the position or the official governance blessing to go into the Node core issues that were related and say, hey, we are owning this. Let's move it over to the package maintenance working group before we raise it to the TSC. Or, hopefully never raise it to the TSC and you get a lot of agreement and we can find consensus here. And because of the governance model, we actually can say to the TSC, we want to own it. Just give it to us. If people want to make changes or proposals or whatever, they have to come to us first, right? And this is how it works for other groups that explicitly own aspects of this, right? And they've been changing, different groups have spun up and back down for different areas of the project before. But we didn't do that. And that has led to, I think, is some false starts, some decision-making that got out of, I don't want to say control. It's just not a control issue. It got confusing where to go. I think it made the conversations harder to follow because there would be multiple issues in the node.js repo, and then they would be raised to the TSC meeting, but not everybody can join the TSC meeting because we're not all TSC members, right? So the conversation ended up having, I think, gaps. So my point with this idea and the proposal that I want to make is that we could give this a home that would allow folks who want to have these kind of discussions a clear place to come before it goes into what's been happening, which is like effectively battle PRs, right? Which is just not healthy, I think, for the project, right? Like having two PRs that do the polar opposite of thing, and that be the only way we can have a discussion about the topic is like broken, in my opinion. I just don't think that's healthy. And I think we could have a really healthy conversation here, and then we could figure out the next steps. And if that next step is a PR to Node Core, then that's fine. That has precedent in the ecosystem and the governance. And so I think that if we just charter that, it would not only give that place, but also give this group a little bit more direction. I think we've been a little bit rudderless, for a while. Like we keep meeting and we have issues that we are making minor progress on, but this is one where I think we could make like a really meaningful difference. So anyway, I'll cede the floor. Darcy's got some comments in the chat. I don't know if we need to address those first or.
No,
Does anybody else want to jump in? Go ahead. I certainly take the point of like not everybody can show up at TSC meetings, so it is good to have a place where the discussion can take place. That basically anybody can show up to, right? And the chartering and that aspect could be slightly different, but it's, I guess, they're tied together in the sense of unless there's the charter, will people come to the space versus others, right?
This is specifically the problem that I think chartering solves. That is it. Like the rest of it, we can do these discussions. However, the problem is that the structures we have been using today are inherently limited, and they are inherently escalating the issue very quickly, right? You basically go from nothing to a PR against Node Core, and then people are battling it out in there, where we could have a much lower stakes conversation, find the alignment, and then all get behind a PR, whatever that PR is. Like there's a lot of discussions that need to happen. Those have been, Jeffrey opened up a bunch. And to be honest, in my opinion, that discussion should not have started in a PR to Node Core. That was just his only way to do that, right? That's the way Node Core works. If it's not a PR with a concrete change, it's hard to have a discussion. These groups are way more about fostering the
the discussion.
stages, right? Yeah.
One challenge that comes to mind is we have quite a few current project team members listed. And in chartering, if the ask is going to be and that the team gets to make the decision and have a vote on it, it is a little bit in terms of how relevant are the team members in terms of the ones who can, if the ask is to have a sort of some sort of decision making, then you got to look at the team members and say how relevant is it, and that. So go ahead, you have your hand up. So.
Well, I was going to ask, that's a point I hadn't even thought about. So that is a quite important thing we need to address.
It's kind of so I think it comes down to what the ask is, right? If the ask is that, and that's where it's it comes down to what would the team own, right? And then it's like, depending on what that is, all these other things matter or not.
Yeah, and so that's where my thought is we would own, and we have to be very crisp here, and I think there'd be a theory part and a concrete list of items. And so what the theory part would be, we would own decisions around inclusion of tools and the design of those tools, which are shipped with the node distribution. So this is really trying to directly tackle the two questions of, should we ship NPM and should we ship core pack? And then all the things that are around that, right? So this would be, there's implicit agreements that the NPM team has made in the past about what it means to ship NPM with core and things they would keep up. That would, instead of it being just an implicit thing, this group would be the ones who centrally work with NPM on making sure that happens healthily and long-term. Similar for core pack, right? There are things about what those discussions that happened about, like, what should core pack do if it's going to be shipped with node core? And there was all these, those package managers have to bundle their depths, and we have to be able to lock things, and it needs to be reproducible, and whatever all those things are, right? We would then say that that domain is here. Now, the problem you're pointing out, which is, I think, super valid, and maybe this group isn't the right group and we need a new one, is we have a ton of scope this group has handled in the past that is not that.
Yeah.
And those are not overlapping, right? So the impactful status project board, not really overlapping. Package and knit, like PKG, JS / create, that kind of is, right? Because the goal there was that NPM would shed NPM and knit functionality in favor of a community-owned thing. That to me is kind of package manager asking if we wanted to ever ship something with node core, then that would be that. That could kind of fit, but like the triage team bootstrapping, there's a whole ton of stuff that is not in that space, but is package maintenance, because that's part of the maintenance. So I guess maybe then the question would be, do we think that's enough reason to make a new group explicitly chartered for it instead of this group?
Yeah, and I was like, when you were talking about those issues, I think like the governance around when we like take on a new dependency or not, and what we should be doing with respect to our dependencies. That whole space is a very interesting space that we may not have paid enough attention. Like sometimes it's like, hey, here's a PR, and like, hey, it's got a new dependency. We pull it in. There's a lot of important things around what kind of maintenance burden are we taking on? Things we've had challenge with, like how do they manage their sembers, right? And like all those, like none of those have anything to do with like a package manager or or like the actual thing we're embedding. And so it was making me think like maybe a new group that focuses on and whose charter is to take the first look at depends how any dependency that comes in really should have their blessing is kind of one of the things. And part of the charter would be to develop a set of guidance and governance and whatever that says like, yeah, if we're going to take a dependency on, we should have checked X, Y, and Z. I can see similarly, there's like in these current discussions, there is quite a part of it is like, what does it mean to have a link to something external, right? And like, are we effectively taking on the dependency or not? And so like that same space could cover those kinds of discussions. Sorry, got your hand up, go ahead.
It could. I'm a little bit concerned about scope creep there. So I'm just thinking, for example, right, we have external dependencies on, OpenSSL. I personally am not the right person to be involved in vetting whether or not it is right for us to depend on OpenSSL. The people who are they going to participate in that group? And are they the same people who are the right folks to talk about package managers? Probably not, right?
Yeah, like I just wonder, like, it depends on which parts of the discussion need to be addressed, right? Like in this case, part of I'm not like for me, if it was free to have 3 package managers, I might be like, yeah, let's just bundle them all. But I'm more like any dependency you take on, whole bunch of new vulnerabilities, that takes us a lot of work. We just can't, like, as a project, from my opinion is we just can't take on extra work like that unless unless there's enough extra, like, I don't want to say value, right? Because of course there's value to somebody, but like it's that trade-off balance. And like that's when we're like, if we already have one thing, having 2 of the same thing, it's hard for me to make the. But anyway, I don't want to get into the detail, but like it's back to, and then there's separately, like the package manager one that's, I guess where I was going is that's still part of that discussion for some people, right? And then there's other things which are not that are part of the discussion too. So you might be right that like a more focused thing would make sense just for package managers, although that one I think might be like and I guess working groups are like they come and go, right? Like that seems like something that just needs to be worked through, and then
So that I kind of think I disagree with.
yeah, okay.
And that's why I think it is important for formalization here. So if we are continuing to ship NPM, then there will be an eternal need for some official interface with the NPM team. And that will never go away. Whether that is, what we've been doing, which is totally informal, and we trust those folks a lot, and they seem, have been making, good decisions historically, I think so. Like, why change is sort of where people have been. But the problem is then there's a lot of people saying we should change. And where do they have to go? They don't have a place where they can go and actually talk with the NPM folks unless the NPM folks get invited onto the TSC call to be special guests, right? But if we explicitly made this scope as tight as we can now, to Darcy's point, it is nebulous. We would need to, this is what the proposal I think needs to work out, is like slim it down to the actual important parts that need to be addressed. So like we don't want to get into some of the broader things if we can help it, I think, but we would add a lot of value. And I think we would add a lot of permanent value in having a working group that is specifically dedicated to the choice of including or not tools that manage dependencies. And this is so explicitly the idea would be we would list 2 things under it: the relationship with NPM and that and Core-Pak today. And then I think it could include, other things in the future. We've had, there was a version management working group. As we've been having discussions here, there is a pretty strong argument to be made that Node is a dependency of your project. So I think actually doing a little bit of this group would then also be the place to centrally discuss how you depend on Node in your project. I think would be part of the scope as well. And that to me would be the 3 really clear areas that could be taken ownership. And then we'd have to like figure out how to wordsmith it to make clear up the things that Darcy's pointing out. Yeah, go ahead, Darcy.
Yeah, my biggest problem with or like what I find most contentious is just the terms that are used for like package management, because it's so broad. And as I was saying in like the chat, it's so nebulous. And if you don't define what you're talking about, everybody has a different understanding about what the tool is, what it will do, and what the capabilities are, what the scope is, right? And that's why I really think that we should have defined what package management was before introducing a new dependency, which may have overlapping capabilities. And I think that we would need to do that exercise before I would say changing the charter or even proposing any changes to this group's scope. We should do that work. But where my head goes, just, thinking forward and just knowing this space really well, you end up owning a huge scope, right? Like you end up saying we own, you just said like there's a version management working group. There's a build working group. Do we take over the scope of the build? Like there's a working group that have like these individual things. And when you talk about package management, like what do you actually mean? Is it also the distribution? Is it the updating of your dependencies? Is it like, like it could be many things to many different people. It's really, really tough. Like I do see overlap in terms of us trying to unify the ecosystem's understanding of certain shared artifacts like package JSON work that we've been doing. I think that's like has been really important, and actually really I would love to double down on the idea that hopefully this working group could be the space that like NPM or anybody else that's interested comes to talk about those kinds of things. And that's why we've had such an overlap with like the OpenJS Foundation collab spaces, and the people that have gone to that and the package metadata conversations that are over there we have the exact same people that are coming to this group, right? Like there's huge overlap because it's the same folks interested in the same thing, trying to achieve a similar goal of like codifying the understanding of the fields in package JSON so that we can build good tools around them with common understanding of what they're supposed to do. And yeah, so I'm concerned that the charter today, and I didn't realize the charter today does not really map directly to like our goals. And I know that the goals was another thing. And to Michael's point as well, like the people listed on the member group is also kind of outdated, which we realized back in Bilbao as well. I showcased that to some folks. And so hopefully to get more people in, we could update that as well. And but I do think it is important that we recharter, but I just want to be mindful, or not recharter, but like we more clearly define a charter that
refocus, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But I will just want to make sure that like we don't end up owning the entire scope of software, the software development. Like, so I don't think that's fair. Like you can't say that this group is going to own everything. That's not cool. Like that's not right. So yeah, because it's just package management is it's replace package with software. Right, we replace package with software, and it's just you immediately, I think it unlocks in everybody's brain, holy cow, this is a big space. This could mean so much. This could be what's the version of the software, how do we make it good, like how do we run scripts, how we execute things. Could be such a broad scope. And truly, if you look at the tool that we ship in Node today or have historically, like NPM scope was extremely large. And so that's where like I think that's like getting really granular with what we actually want to do in the group will help give us focus and also help us be better. So
Juan has his hand up.
Yeah, hey, so yeah, I think I agree with Dorsey, and maybe we could also try to take the core pack maintenance aspect into it, because so someone needs to maintain it, and decisions around this area is going to affect core pack and how to maintain it. Maybe it makes sense to have a core pack centered working group, or if not a working group, something like that. Of course, the issue would be how to define core pack. Like it's still complicated to define what are the edges of what we're trying to achieve. But I think it would make sense to have the core pack maintenance team involved, and maybe we centered around that, so it's less broad.
Wes was next.
can I just quickly respond to that first?
Yeah,
I think that's great. If we can get folks from that group that are like actively participating, like onto calls with us, like just getting on calls more often across in this space is great. Like if we can get Sultan, if we can get Mael, we have yourself on, which is amazing. That's on. Thank you for joining. Like I think that's awesome. Like I've been looking forward to trying. 2-3 years ago, I was looking forward to trying to work closely together with the other folks in package management. I'm no longer a part of NPM, but I do think that just having those people show up to the same place, all in the same place, whether or not we're helping to maintain core back, or helping maintain NPM, or helping maintain something else that's kind of in the same space, it's just good if we can all just say, hey, at least show up. Like if we all show up in the same meeting, and it's not the TSE meetings, but these meetings, then that's great. Like I think we just need participation, and for us to all be in the same room. And if we're all willing to at least do that, like that's a huge first step for me, like in terms of like getting over the hump of miscommunication or where we're not aligned, or like, I think it's very helpful. And just want to say thank you, like appreciate that.
Yeah, second that.
Yes.
So I think that we have a pretty buttoned up case to say what we mean by package manager is any tool that has any capability to download and unpackage a dependency that is not bundled with the initial distribution. And it may do way more than that. But at its core, if any tool is going to be shipped by node that its explicit job includes finding and downloading external software for you to run as part of your project, it would be within the domain. So that would be right. We're not gonna take over HTTP, even though you could like figure out some way to concoct it, because that's not its primary objective. But the primary objective of both NPM and CorePack is to download software from the internet for you to run as part of your project. And if we just say that's it, like that to me would be very clear. And yes, like Darcy, as you mentioned, these tools all do a ton of other stuff as well. And we would explicitly say, if you want to build a tool that doesn't download stuff, but still does scripts, say turbo repo, say Vercel says we are divesting of turbo repo and we want Node to ship it internally. And it is a task orchestrator that understands your package graph. So it still understands, reads your package lock, it reads your, whatever, all these things, and does a task graph. And say somebody in Node Core wants that to be part of Node Core. That is not in our scope. Even though it might have the same underlying code that to understand the dependencies, it is not downloading from the internet, whether that's a registry or whatever, some piece of software. And that would be where we slice it to try to avoid the complicated landscape and confusion. I see your face maybe look like you might not agree. So if you wanna.
Yeah, I just said in chat, like it may be a slippery slope. It just ends up like I've looked in the core pack issues and folks are already asking for like, oh, where's like core pack run, right? Like where's like, so it's kind of, I just think that it definitely is a slippery slope. So we have to be like, I would love to be more concrete if we could create like if you could create even a PR if you have time, or even just like write down a few bullet points of what you just said in terms of what your thoughts are about the definition of like the tool that we would have scope over, or like the tooling that we would have scope over. I think we can then at least look at something that's like more.
Totally. And I will do that. I actually have a repo that I made that has this doc that I'm like slowly working on. Much, it's open source. Sometimes it's always going to go slow. So I would like to get that sooner rather than later. But the things that I was struggling with was, should this group do that? And so I have a thing, but I didn't want to spend a ton of time like writing a really detailed breakdown without hearing your all's thoughts on it. I do think, though, the slippery slope part, we could make a not slippery slope by saying, if the tool includes an explicit feature to download software and includes a bunch of other stuff, we own all of it. for that tool. But if you want to have a tool, so like for NPM, I'm trying to like differentiate between, NPM and turbo repo in this case. So the clear dividing line is NPM has an explicit important feature, or, part of its scope is to download software. But in addition, we are taking on interfacing with everything NPM exposes. So this would be run. This would be if people are asking for core pack run, then that would fit within the scope, because we have said core pack fits the basic criteria to be owned by this group. And then from there, we would take on the rest of the scope that we think core pack may or may not need to include to achieve its goals. And same thing for NPM. If NPM wants to ship a feature that explicitly breaks something for Node that is not about downloading and installing things, that would also be within scope, because we would own the decision on what to vendor that is built to ship a feature to download and install software from the internet. Does that, I know it, I agree it is complicated, but I think we could write wording that like goes in and says very clearly, like, to address all of those concerns. And I'm happy to write that.
I had my hand up for a little bit, so I think like writing down a suggestion and workshopping is the way to close on, like, can we close the scope? I'm going to go slightly differently and maybe like expand the scope. That, like, there's been like you said, there's been like the node version manager discussion. And really the problem that we're dealing with, is just like top of the head thinking, is like, we're talking about dependency management. And that includes like the packages which we want to manage, but it also could include Node. And we have our Node installers, which were not so useful. Like, so you could step back and say, well, the real, like, in a perfect world, Node would not do any dependency management, and it would be managed as a dependency along with everything else. We've got our history today. So I think we'd have a hard time saying we're not doing it at all, but you could just say, like, we're at where we're at. But like, the vision of the right answer is actually some other dependency manager which manages all these dependencies, and Node along with it as one of those dependencies. And so our energy shouldn't be on like trying to squeeze some things into Node to do some of that, because like, if you squeeze it into Node, it's not really going to be able to do, like, can it do a great job of managing itself? Like, or should there really just be some new tool that comes along that says, I'm going to manage Node, I'm going to manage packages, and like, that's where we put our energy into, is defining what that would look like. And if people really want to push the future, that future could end up with something that everybody installs that isn't Node directly, but it addresses concerns people have in terms of it being, well, it can install any package man, it can install the different versions of Node, and like that level above. And then the Node project doesn't have to worry about all the things, right? Like, it's up to that other project to worry about the issues, and that would be a much cleaner separation. So I'll let you go, Wes. You have your hand up.
I think I fully agree with you. Also, if you get a chance, read this thing Darcy posted here. I think it is a really great, well-written and concise approach here. I believe that the Node project needs to have a group that handles a relationship with the tooling that is involved to build Node projects. So when you say, you said,
yes,
Node should not be in the business of, or I don't know your exact words, of managing dependencies. Agreed. We don't. Today, that is scope that is so hot, so large, that we have 3 whole projects doing it in slightly different ways. With 4, now, I mean, we'll, hopefully soon see some other 5 Bun. We've got, I should have never said 4.
Sure.
I mean, we got tons of them, right? What I think Node needs to do, and this is what my proposal is give a group the responsibility of managing the relationship with the tools that it takes to properly build and work in a Node project. And so that, to me, is fundamentally, to start, because of the history and the design, a dependency manager, right? And it does need to include Node, and and we can my doc. I haven't yet copied in Darcy's comments here, but I'm gonna do that into my proposal, which is like Node is a dependency, so is your package manager. Something's got to bootstrap it. That's what we want to get to. And whether that's something Node owns or not, actually, I don't care. If that is a third-party thing and we decide to vendor it in because we think that, ASDF is clearly the best solution, and we want to say Node project blesses ASDF as our bootstrap. I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just saying as an example, then that would be something we would charter the group to decide. And then we would make a recommendation. Obviously, the TSC would have to agree and all the normal stuff, but at least we'd
Totally
have
agree. Like I shouldn't, I wasn't trying to say like the Node project shouldn't be involved in that concept. I was really saying Node is a binary that gets shipped, doesn't necessarily need like,
yeah,
but
it
the
shouldn't
project
be
should
binary.
care and be involved in discussions, whether the thing ends up being shipped by Node or not, like that's a wholly different. But like that would be like a view of the future world that might help in some of the discussions, right? To say, well, the view of the future world is to get there, so it's worth investing energy to that things that support that. Things that try and change where we're at, but they're really historical, and we don't think like, you could take the viewpoint that says the future vision is something else manages Node. Node has nobody ever uses npm in Node because like you don't need to, right? They all use this other thing. Or you can say, well, no, we should make all the package managers in Node so that, once it's installed, if we could agree on like, well, that's not, which of those two is the future, that might help in terms of like, some of the decision making and thinking of like, well, okay, how do we get to the future we agree is the right thing versus where we're at because of history.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I hope to lay out in my proposal
Right.
for. So to time check here though, so should I do this within the package maintenance working group? Do we think, because I will open the PR with the doc, or maybe I'll open an issue with the proposal in markdown form.
I think
And then-
that's a good place to workshop that. Yes. Like, I think the answer, whether it would be a separate group or the same group, like, it kind of depends on that scope. Like from what I just said, that maybe should include everybody who was interested in the Node version managers too, right? Because it's really like all those aspects. And so that might push it to being sort of a separate, like a new group. But I think the proposal is a good first step for even deciding that, right?
Yeah, and so go ahead, Darcy.
I was just gonna say it'd be nice to consolidate groups versus create a new group. Like I would prefer, I'd prefer increasing the scope if we have to a little bit, just to not
Sure.
have to create a net new destination to find this stuff.
Also, I like more meetings is not something we should be adding. Like we've been having trouble for a while getting people to come to this meeting. If we make a new group that's effectively the same people here, but another meeting, we're just spreading it.
I think just get the proposal. That'll probably clarify what makes sense.
Okay, then I will do that. It'll probably be sometime this weekend. And then we can discuss from there. I think there's nothing else.
I think we're at the end of our time, and that is also the end of the agenda. So, okay. Well,
I see
anything
you're
else?
off mute. I just wanted to make sure, like, did you have anything else you want to add? Because I see you're off mute. I'm not sure if you want to.
Who's that,
Did you
me?
say Luca?
No, Antoine, right?
Ah, no, nothing to add.
Okay. Well, thanks for everybody's time. I think I'll be interested to see how you craft that description, and we'll go from there.
If the issues in Node Core are anything to learn from, it is a difficult challenge to craft the right words for this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thanks. Talk to everybody later. Bye.